A little under the scrutiny of the media, saying things, taking pictures and stuff. How does someone live with that and not feel like you want to go and knock someone's face for what they wrote?
If you ask most people what their number one fear is, what do you think it is? Most people's number one fear is public humiliation. Okay.
All right, let's set the stage here. We're talking about two acting titans. Mel Gibson, the man behind Braveheart, Mad Max, and Lethal Weapon. A dude who knows how to tell a story. And then you've got Robert De Niro, one of the greatest actors of all time. Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, The Godfather Part 2. I mean, come on. But here's the twist. One of them is still making movies that people actually care about, while the other, well, let's just say he's been making headlines for all the wrong reasons. And just when you thought Hollywood drama couldn't get any juicier, Mel Gibson steps in and says what we've all been thinking. But hold up. Before we dive into that, quick question. Who's your favorite actor between these two, Mel or De Niro? Drop your pick in the comments and let's see who comes out on top. Alright, so Mel Gibson, love him or hate him, the guy's had a wild career. Scandals? Yeah, plenty. But here's the crazy part. He actually bounced back. Hacksaw Ridge won Oscars, he's directing Lethal Weapon 5, and he's out here making movies that people actually want to see. And then there's De Niro. This guy was once untouchable. Seriously. Raging Bull, Heat, the dude was a force. But lately, it's like he's more focused on lecturing people than, acting. And trust me, people notice. Instead of giving us another iconic performance, De Niro's been busy turning Hollywood into his personal soapbox. Every time he's in the news, it's not for some amazing new role, it's because he's going off on political rants. And guess who's not having it anymore? Yep, Mel Gibson just called him out. So let's talk about why this is such a big deal. Mel Gibson is not a Hollywood darling. He's been blacklisted, canceled, exiled, you name it. And yet, he's pulled off one of the most successful comebacks in recent history. Why? Because he's not out here preaching. He's just making movies. And guess what? People like that. They're tired of actors treating award shows like political rallies. Like, dude, we just want to enjoy a good movie without getting a lecture. Now, let's compare that to De Niro. Instead of letting his work speak for itself, he's been making more headlines for his outbursts than for his movies. And speaking of movies, oh man, have you seen the Alto Nights trailer? Oof, this was supposed to be his big comeback. A gangster film, De Niro playing two roles. Sounds like a slam dunk, right? Except it flopped. Warner Brothers practically buried the movie before it even came out. And here's the real kicker. Audiences just aren't showing up for De Niro's films anymore. And Mel Gibson? Oh, he sees exactly why. Now this is where it gets spicy. Mel Gibson just said what nobody in Hollywood wants to admit. He called out actors like De Niro who spend more time preaching than, performing. And honestly, he's not wrong. Think about it. When was the last time you saw a De Niro movie that actually blew you away? Yeah, I'll wait. Meanwhile, Mel's gearing up for Lethal Weapon 5, and audiences are actually excited for it. It's almost like, oh, I don't know, people prefer movies over lectures. Crazy, right? Here's the real issue. Hollywood is changing. People are done with actors telling them how to think. They just want good stories. They want escapism. And Mel, he's figured that out. De Niro, he's still stuck in the past, yelling at people like that's somehow going to bring his career back. It's almost like, oh, I don't know. People prefer movies over lectures. Crazy, right? Here's the real issue. Hollywood is changing. People are done with actors telling them how to think. They just want good stories. They want escapism. And Mel, he's figured that out. De Niro, he's still stuck in the past, yelling at people like that's somehow going to bring his career back. And the worst part? Hollywood is starting to move on from him. Studios don't want the drama. They want box office success. And right now, De Niro just isn't bringing that. So here's my question to you. Do you think De Niro can ever turn things around? Or is he stuck being that angry old guy who just won't let it go? And what about Mel Gibson? Has he actually redeemed himself? Or is he still too controversial? Let me know what you think in the comments. People want stories that captivate them, not sermons that scold them. Gibson's figured that out, and it's why his star continues to shine while others fade. This isn't to say Gibson's perfect, far from it, but in the showdown of ideologies and career trajectories, he's got the upper hand. He's managed to navigate the pitfalls of Hollywood by focusing on what he does best, making movies. De Niro, on the other hand, seems intent on alienating the very audience that once adored him. First off, we all know his politics. He's plastered it everywhere, like a teenager's bedroom wall covered in posters of their latest crush. And hey, that's fine. Shout your opinions from the rooftops if that's your thing, but De Niro doesn't just express himself, he weaponizes it. He's like a one-man wrecking crew, bulldozing anyone who dares to disagree. And the worst part, he does it with the kind of smugness that makes you want to hurl your coffee at the screen. But what really grinds my gears is his latest stunt, wagging his finger at crowds in front of courthouses like some self-appointed moral authority. Seriously, who died and made him the king of outrage? It's one thing to have an opinion, but it's another to belittle your fans, the people who actually pay to see your movies and keep your career afloat. Calling them names, labeling them with all sorts of derogatory nonsense, that's not edgy, that's just pathetic. Now, let's talk about this upcoming film, The Alto Nights. It's supposed to be his grand comeback or whatever, but after seeing that trailer, I've got questions. Lots of them. Like, what happened to his acting chops? Did he leave them in 1995? He's playing two mobsters, and instead of being intrigued, I'm cringing. It's like watching someone try to run a marathon after years of sitting on the couch eating chips. Sure, it's technically happening, but it's painful to watch. And let's not forget, Warner Brothers? Oh, they're done. They've washed their hands of him, and honestly, who can blame them? This movie is their swan song with De Niro, and you can bet they're counting down the days until they can slap a no further association disclaimer on all future correspondence. When a major studio doesn't want to touch you with a 10-foot pole, maybe it's time to do some soul searching, or at least take a long, hard look in the mirror. Here's the thing about being an actor. You're a representative of the studios, the distributors, and the companies that bankroll your paycheck. You're a brand, whether you like it or not. And when you start spouting off incendiary nonsense, you're not just hurting yourself, you're dragging everyone else down with you. It's like being the kid who ruins the group project for everyone because you couldn't be bothered to do your part. But does De Niro care? Of course not. He's too busy playing the martyr, acting like the world is out to get him. Newsflash, the world isn't out to get you, De Niro. You're doing a bang-up job of sabotaging yourself all on your own. And don't even get me started on his passion for the craft. Watching him phone it in on screen is like watching someone half-heartedly assemble IKEA furniture. Sure, it'll hold up for a bit, but one wrong move and the whole thing collapses. Meanwhile, you've got actors out here pouring their hearts and souls into their work. Then there's De Niro just coasting by on fumes and past glory. Look, I'm not saying the guy doesn't have talent. He's had his moments. But talent without effort is like a car without gas. It's not going anywhere. And as for his political grandstanding, well, maybe it's time to step off the soapbox and get back to doing what you're supposedly good at, if you even remember what that is. My unsolicited advice to Robert De Niro: take a break. Step away from the spotlight, the cameras, and for the love of all things holy, the megaphone. Go find yourself, take up knitting, volunteer at a soup kitchen, do something, anything, that doesn't involve yelling at people or embarrassing yourself on the world stage. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to watch a has-been flame out in real time. It's not entertaining, it's just sad. And if you're not careful, De Niro, that's exactly how you're going to be remembered. Not as a legendary actor, but as the guy who couldn't get out of his own way. And speaking of self-awareness, let's circle back to the whole fan interaction debacle. Fans aren't just wallets with legs, they're the reason you've got the platform to stand on in the first place. So maybe, instead of alienating them, try listening. Crazy idea, right? But that's the thing about respect. It's a two-way street. When you treat people like garbage, don't be surprised when they stop showing up for you. In a world where culture and public opinion hold so much power, you'd think De Niro would at least pretend to have a little humility. But nope, he's out here doubling down, digging his heels in, and basically daring people to turn their backs on him. And they will. Oh, they absolutely will, because at the end of the day, there's always another actor, another movie, another story to tell. Nobody's indispensable, least of all someone who's actively trying to make themselves unlikable. It's not too late for him to turn things around, but let's be real. The clock is ticking. The industry moves fast, and there's no room for dead weight. If De Niro wants to stay relevant, he's going to have to pull off a miracle, or at least a decent performance. But miracles are hard to come by, and decent performances don't happen when you're too busy ranting about everything under the sun. His antics have driven audiences away. Warner Brothers, once the powerhouse behind his name, now feels like they're scrambling to wash their hands of him. Other studios that once boasted his involvement, same story. And what's his response to this chaos? He goes on about doing what's best for the country and California, as though anyone really believes Hollywood's moral compass points in that direction. Anywhere other than the box office, the cherry on top is that De Niro's been labeled as some kind of ambassador for Hollywood. Let that sink in. The guy's got a title that sounds more like an LA PR line than a real honor. Meanwhile, while he's busy wearing that badge, actors like Mel Gibson and James Woods are openly calling him out. Gibson, the man who's arguably been through his own rounds of controversy, still manages to come off as more genuine and passionate about his craft. At least Mel's got the guts to own his projects. Say what you want about a fifth Lethal Weapon, but the guy's putting his heart into it, he's involved, he cares, and frankly, he's got nothing to prove. Meanwhile, Robert De Niro's creative contributions feel about as substantial as a soggy napkin. His recent roles, comedy fluff and projects that scream, "I'm just here for the paycheck," just aren't cutting it. Let's face it, the guy's action hero days are over. The mobster roles that once defined him are now just pale imitations of their former glory. If you've seen the trailer for Alto Nights, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's awkward, forced, and frankly painful to watch someone try so hard to relive a heyday that's long gone. And here's the thing, fans aren't dumb. They see through the act. They're tired of being sold a watered-down version of what made him famous in the first place. There's only so much goodwill you can burn before people stop caring. The bigger picture here is that people start tuning out entirely, and judging by the buzz, or lack thereof, around Robert De Niro's recent projects, that's exactly what's happening. It's not just about one bad movie or a disappointing role. This has become a pattern. Robert De Niro's trajectory has been a slow descent into mediocrity. He seems to be clinging to the notion that name recognition is enough to carry him. Newsflash, it's not. Audiences want substance. They want authenticity. And, most importantly, they want to feel like their time and money are being respected. Let's not forget the bigger picture. Hollywood is a ruthless place. For every Robert De Niro out there milking the system, there are dozens of talented newcomers waiting for their shot. These are people who still care about the craft, who are hungry to make their mark, and who aren't just coasting on past glories. Maybe it's time to let them have the spotlight. So, here's the takeaway. If you're going to stay in the game, bring something real to the table. Don't just show up, cash a check, and expect fans to stick around. That's not how this works. And if you're not willing to do that, well, maybe it's time to let someone else take the spotlight. The industry isn't short on talent, and audiences aren't short on options. Mel Gibson and Robert De Niro, two Hollywood icons with careers spanning decades. But oh boy, talk about two wildly different paths and how they've handled the roller coaster of fame. These guys aren't just actors, they're walking case studies in how to navigate or torpedo a legacy. If you're looking for a tale of contrasts, let's dive into this head first. Warning, it's not all roses and Oscars. Let's kick off with Mel Gibson. Remember, Mad Max, Lethal Weapon? The guy was the ultimate 80s and 90s action star, a blue-eyed, grinning heartthrob with charisma to spare. And Braveheart. Forget it. That movie made us believe a guy in a kilt could lead armies and win Oscars. Gibson didn't just act, he directed his way into Hollywood royalty. But then, well, you know what they say about flying too close to the sun? The aftermath, 2006 was a doozy for Mel. A DUI arrest spiraled into an anti-Semitic tirade, and suddenly, the golden boy of Hollywood became the industry's untouchable pariah. It wasn't just bad, it was career suicide on a grand scale. Studios ran for cover, collaborators ghosted him, and fans were left scratching their heads. Sure, he apologized a lot, but for many, the damage was done. Then came the 2011 debacle, a custody battle with his ex, Oksana Grigorieva, that unearthed recordings no one asked for but everyone heard. Mistreatment allegations, leaked rants, definitely not the stuff of redemption arcs. Yet somehow, Mel clawed his way back into the limelight. Hacksaw Ridge. In 2016 was his Hail Mary, and it landed. 6 Oscar nominations, 2 wins, and a reminder that, like it or not, the guy's got talent. But here's the thing, talent doesn't erase a problematic past. For some, Gibson's directorial prowess is enough to forgive, or at least forget. For others, he's still the guy who said those things, and the shadow of his past never quite went away. It's a testament to how some doors never fully reopen, no matter how many Oscars you stack. Darrow didn't become polarizing because of DUIs or leaked phone calls. No, his weapon of choice? A microphone. The man's been on a political warpath, particularly during the Trump years, with speeches and interviews that could double as roasts. Some people love it. Finally, a Hollywood star with the guts to say what's on his mind. Others, they roll their eyes and mutter about celebrities staying in their lane. And let's not sugarcoat it, De Niro's critics don't hold back. They call him arrogant, out of touch, a champagne socialist railing against inequality from his penthouse.